my name is Kayla Cherry, and on this channel, I talk about films and all the things going on within them. Today, we're going to be talking about the films Pearl and To Die For, and look at how both films deal with the topic of ambition. Both the female protagonists, Pearl and Suzanne Stone, use murder as an outlet to express their intensity of their ambitions. They both murder when they feel like they aren't getting what they want, and when people are getting in the way of their aspirations, and feeling fed by their delusional commitment to their dreams that are, for them, unachievable. Their goals are unachievable because the nature of their ambition is deeply flawed. Coming from a place of deep insecurity and a need for social acceptance over a personal, healthy motivation to succeed. So first I'll be talking about the film Pearl, giving some background on that, doing the same thing for To Die For. Then we'll get into a topic of ambition. What is it? How does it manifest in women? And how do Pearl and Suzanne both take ambition and morph it into something that's unrecognizable, into something murderous? Pearl is a horror film released in 2022. It is the second film in the X trilogy that is directed, produced, edited, and co-written by Ty West. The other writer is Mia Goth, who stars in the X trilogy as both Pearl, the character we're talking about in this film, and Maxxxine, the character who stars in the first film X and the last film Maxxxine. Pearl tells the backstory of the killer Pearl in X. Pearl is a young woman who dreams of being a movie star. With her husband off fighting World War I, a sick father, and a mother that does not support her ambitions, she is stuck on the family farm. When the opportunity for her big break comes, Pearl will do anything to get it, leading her down a murderous path, all in pursuit of her dream. To Die For is a black satire and comedy released in 1995. It is directed by Gus Van Sant and stars Nicole Kidman as Suzanne Stone, a small-time local weather reporter who dreams of being a big major news anchor like Barbara Walters. When she believes her husband is getting in the way of her goals, she has him murdered by the high schooler she is having an affair with. The film also stars Matt Dillon as her husband, Joaquin Phoenix as the teenage lover named Jimmy, and Casey Affleck as one of his friends. The story is told in a flashback style, intercut with mockumentary-style direct-to-camera interviews with several of the characters, including Suzanne herself. The script is written by Buck Henry, who is in the film as well, and is based on a novel of the same name released in 1990 by Joyce Maynard, who is also in the film. Inspired by the real-life case of Pamela Smart, who is not in the film because she is in jail. She conspired with her teenage lover and his friends to get her husband killed in order to receive $140,000 in life insurance money, and in order to run away with her teenage lover. So now that we know a little bit about the films themselves, let's get into the topic of ambition. According to the study titled On the Value of Aiming High, The Causes and Consequences of Ambition by Timothy Judge and John Kammeyer-Mueller, ambition is the persistent and generalized striving for success, attainment, and accomplishment. So ambition can be both positive and negative. Positive traits we associate with ambition can be things like passion, being a go-getter, being very determined. Or on the negative side, ambition can be seen as being selfish, having a lot of hubris, or even being aggressive in pursuit of your goals. Ambitious people generally want to be recognized by others, can have either positive or negative attitudes towards themselves, usually in connection to whether or not they have achieved their goals or not, and have varying attitudes towards others, often comparing themselves to other people, especially people who they believe are getting closer to goals that they are not themselves getting close to. In regards to women's connection with ambition, in the career sense, it has grown over time. In the beginning of the 1900s, around the time that Pearl would have been around, only 20% of women were in the workforce, compared to by the 1990s, when Suzanne Stone was around, over half of women, 57% in the US, were at work. In the article, Do Women Lack Ambition by Anna Fels, written for the Harvard Business Review in 2004, she analyzes the BEM sex role inventory. This was a 70s experiment done at Stanford, where students had to assign adjectives to both men and women based on how desirable it is for each gender to have said traits. For women, they got adjectives such as loyal, compassionate, sensitive to the needs of others, eagerness to soothe hurt feelings, and even childlike. And for men, they got traits such as independent, dominant, willing to take risk, competitive, self-sufficient, and even ambitious. So for ambitious women, the road is fraught. There's all these societal standards that make it hard for women to be ambitious. And you could see how maybe with all these standards in place for how women and men need to be, that some women, especially more modern women like Suzanne, would use ambition as a rejection of such gendered roles. However, it is important to note that Suzanne and Pearl are not feminist icons. They are ambitious, yes, and they take on more masculine traits in pursuit of that ambition. However, they still utilize things like their sexuality in order to get ahead, in order to get somewhere they think will get them closer to achieving their goals. Yet, this embrace of sexuality as a means to an end leads to dissatisfaction for both protagonists, as they both use their bodies to get what they want, but don't actually end up getting anywhere close to what they desire. Anna Fels describes this as demoralization, and says it comes from a lack of appropriate affirmations of accomplishments in combination with threats to women's sexual identity. And for both women, Pearl and Suzanne, demoralization leads to murder. For Pearl, her mother doesn't support her dreams, which does lead to her being repressed. She can only openly express herself when she's alone, whether that is killing animals in the barn or having a rendezvous with a scarecrow in a field. In the article, The Art of Repression in Ty West Pearl, Sydney Bollinger writes, Pearl experienced intense repression of her womanhood, her livelihood, her sexuality. Often when something is repressed, it will reveal itself elsewhere. And for Pearl, she only found relief in a violent physicality. Her intense rage at the confines of her situation prompts her to act out in a pointedly unwomanly way. The one time that she is able to express herself with another person is with the projectionist. She meets him and starts to have an affair with him, and she sees him as a way out. He talks to her about Europe, kind of feeds her idea that she can be a star, and when she realizes that he actually cannot do this for her, that he can't take her off the farm, that he can't make her a star, she kills him. Because Pearl's not supported, her mental state deteriorates, and her dream of becoming a star, more outside of the realm of healthy ambition, is something literally dire for her to have. Everyone is a threat to her, a way to keep her on the farm and away from her dream. Because Pearl is so desperate and so demoralized, she turns to murder in order to regain control over a life that she has no grasp on. In To Die For, Suzanne uses sex very strategically to get what she wants. On the night of her honeymoon, she sneaks off to a news conference and meets up with an executive who makes a pass at her. And she chooses to, on her honeymoon night, sleep with this executive instead of her husband in the hopes it'll get her closer to her dream of being a network star. When she eventually does get a small anchor role on a local news station, she decides to take that and expand the scope of it. She begins making a documentary about today's teens in which she meets Jimmy, a teenage boy who falls in love with her. She begins an affair with this teenage boy and then uses him as an outlet to get rid of her husband, who she thinks is getting in the way of her dream of being a news anchor. This impulse for Suzanne to even want to kill her husband comes from a scene in which she suggests that maybe they settle down, maybe even start a family. Penny Folger, in the article A Woman's Place in Television, Ambition, and Murder in Gus Van Sant's To Die For, described the scene as this. The camera takes on Suzanne's POV, becoming an iris with her husband in the center, surrounded by blackness. It simultaneously conveys the dissociation she feels and makes him visually into a target. She's like a wild animal silently zeroing in on her prey. This rejection of family is something that both Pearl and Suzanne share, as a family and a child would mean that they would not be able to achieve their dreams. At the end of Pearl, there's a 7-minute monologue in which she reveals that she was relieved when she had a miscarriage, because a child would have meant that she would have to stay on the farm and not pursue her dreams of being a movie star. Similarly, when Suzanne is talking with her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law suggests that maybe she has some children, Suzanne laughs off the idea. She basically says that pregnancy will make you fat, it'll make your boobs sag, and you can't travel the world doing news-breaking stories when you have a child with you. In a sense, you can't be Barbara Walters. So in this way, again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, where both Pearl and Suzanne reject traditional femininity. They don't want children, they don't want families. And this is something that is expected of women. Going back to Anna Fels and Do Women Lack Ambition in the BEM sex inventory, what she found was that two basic tenets of femininity emerged. The first is that femininity only exists in the context of relationship. A woman's sexual identity is based on qualities that cannot be expressed in isolation. The second is that a woman must be providing something to another person, be that person a lover, a child, a sick parent, a husband, or even a boss. Pearl and Suzanne lack the ability to provide to other people, and we see that very clearly. They lack the ability to love children, they lack the ability to love their partners, they lack the ability to love their parents, because they're so in love with their ambition that they cannot afford to be distracted. Anna Fels, my girlie, talking more about the dangerous nature of ambition, says, "We are not used to thinking about recognition as a fundamental emotional need, particularly in adulthood. It's nice when you get it, but if not, it's not the end of the world. Life goes on. We even tend to look down on those whose eagerness for recognition is too obvious, too pressing. And in truth, some people have needs for recognition that are exaggerated and nearly insatiable. They require constant infusions of admiration to maintain their tenuous self-worth. In psychiatry, such individuals are called narcissists." This is very true for Pearl and Suzanne. For them, life does not go on when they are not recognized. For Pearl, she's not only not recognized, but she's actively rejected. When she goes to her dance audition, she is told that she is not the right girl. Although she is a pretty white girl, she's not blonde. So in that case, she is not all-American enough for the dance troupe. At the end of her monologue, Pearl congratulates Missy on getting the role in the dance troupe, and then afterwards kills her for it. In Pearl's case, the lack of recognition was a direct threat to the nature of her ambition. And in that instance, Missy represented that threat, and so she needed to be eliminated. Suzanne, on the other hand, begs to be recognized. She will not let herself not be recognized. She laughs in the fame that she achieves in the wake of her husband's murder, even tries to capitalize on it. She won't let herself not be recognized. When she's not recognized, she's nothing. And there's a scene in the movie that encapsulates this very well. There's a scene where she is in a room and nothing happens. She does a little turn, the lights turn from day to night, and nothing goes on. In the article, To Die For, You're Not Anybody in America Unless You're on TV, Jessica King writes, "Here, one of the few times Suzanne is alone, without an incidental audience or a camera to play to. Nobody is watching, so nothing worthwhile occurs. Suzanne simply edits the days like it's a VHS, and she can record, pause all the uninteresting bits. So when there's no one to recognize her, she has no purpose. She needs eyes on her to make her feel like a person. She needs that attention, because she cannot fill herself up unless she is achieving something, unless she's getting her goals. Her ambition takes over every other impulse that she has." Pearl and Suzanne both let their desire to fulfill their ambition turn into narcissism. This narcissism then leads them to murder because their self-worth can only be fulfilled by achievement, not people. In this way, people become expendable. Going further on how ambition can get out of control, there is a study done entitled "Ambition in Extreme Behavior, Relative Deprivation Leads Ambitious Individuals to Self-Sacrifice," done by a bunch of scientists smarter than I am. We talk about ambition in this way. Every day, individuals perceive that they are treated unfairly or unjustly. We may perceive that other people have been given benefits which we have been denied, or that others are given opportunities and rewards to which we are entitled or of which we are more deserving. This perception is often explained within the context of relative deprivation, in which individuals make comparisons between themselves and relevant reference groups and perceive that they have been unjustly disadvantaged in comparison to that reference group, thus engendering feelings of frustration, anger, and resentment. This is very true for Pearl. She resents the life that she has and believes that she not only deserves, but is entitled to a better life. In the video, Pearl and Maxxxine, Not Everyone Can Be a Star, Antiheroines says, "Pearl is young and aware that the world can offer her more, with endless possibilities beyond the farm's confines. But as you watch the story unfold, you realize there is something deeply wrong with Pearl. She isn't just an innocent girl dreaming of a bigger life. The lack of control over her circumstances brings out the worst parts of her character. Pearl lashes out when she feels like she has been wronged or betrayed. She acts off impulse, and it all comes from her unstable sense of self-worth brought about by the nature of her ambition. Suzanne, on the other hand, already sees herself as a part of the in-group. She already sees herself as this big, famous television news anchor that she wants to be. She does her hair and makeup perfectly. She dresses in a very professional yet sexy and appealing way. And she treats her local weather spot like she's on NBC. Instead of seeing life as treating her unfairly, she sees it as forcefully positive. Everything that she deserves is coming to her, because nothing will stop her from realizing the extent of her ambitions. On this, Penny Folger, in the article "A Woman's Place in Television, Ambition, and Murder in Gus Van Sant's To Die For," writes, "There's something in Suzanne's countenance and single-minded pursuit of this goal that makes her feel less than human. She's as if someone built an anchorwoman robot, trained to kill anyone who might try and dissuade her from her singular purpose." So in this way, you can really see how both women are really locked in on their goals in a way that is not normal, exaggerated, and even deadly. In conclusion, Pearl and Suzanne both use murder as a way of getting closer to what they want. Their ambition is their most toxic trait, and that it externalizes their need to succeed into violence when the path to success is threatened. They reject traditional femininity in some cases to get closer to their dreams, while others embracing a fragmented, transactional sense of sexuality in order to climb the social ladder. In both women, the pursuit of ambition is taken too far, going from a healthy need to fulfill one's personal goals to a desperate, debilitating need for acceptance that will never come. Pearl stays on the farm. Suzanne is killed by the mob. In the end, both women's biggest fears are realized. They never reached their dreams after all. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, feel free to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and stick around for more. I plan on putting out videos at least once a month, all film analysis, film breakdowns, and things of that nature. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.